to Ranting and Raving. I am going to put another entry into this series of Final Fantasy pieces of content I'm doing just for fun. So today's video is going to be not about you, Minus. Come on. Today's video is going to be about all of the mainline games. I'm actually even going to include the few that I haven't beaten here because I still have played them. And I'm familiar enough with their game systems to still have an informed opinion because you don't need to see the ending to play the game. This is going to be about the game systems, and the battle system is going to weigh the heaviest, but if there are like auxiliary systems or components that still contribute to the overall gameplay experience, then I'm going to factor those in as well. Um, so I will also not be excluding the MMOs for this list, which I did on the previous list and will do on some of the later lists and rankings that I plan on doing. But I won't be doing it for this because it's really I'm just kind of going over the game systems in general, and these are obviously my opinions about them. I'm gonna really focus on a few main things. Obviously, a lot of this is subjective. There's elements that are objective, and I'll try to call those out when I get to them. But a lot of this really comes down to one, accessibility. At the end of the day, video games are art, but they're also a mass consumer product. And we want more people to play and enjoy the game than less. So, accessibility is a big factor. Part of accessibility is just like fun, enjoyment, the experience, etc. Part of accessibility is tutorials and game systems and explainers and just how easy to engage with is this battle system in general. Those are big major factors in having this type of game, or RPGs in particular, gaming in general. And so looking at those systems, I think it has. I think it's probably the most important piece. Is the easiest way to say it. Like I think accessibility is really one of the core elements, and then the other element I'm really going to be looking at is innovation, and not necessarily purely the textbook definition. No one has ever done this before. It's a brand new thing, but kind of innovating within the genre, within the space, within the series. Did you attempt to do something new or different? And then if you did it work? Because if you innovated, but it was bad, I'm actually going to hold you to a lower score than I otherwise would because you not only did something different, but it made things even worse than they might have otherwise been. And then obviously on the opposite spectrum, if you innovate and it goes well, I think that deserves more praise. So enough with the preamble and me running my mouth for 3 minutes. Let's hop right into the list. I am going to go completely in order. There's a few spin-off games, Type Zero, Crystal Chronicles, like Crisis Core, Dirge of Cerberus. Like I'm mostly staying mainline because then I have to go into phone games, and I'm not doing this for an hour plus. And again, some of these like I haven't played, or they're just like there's no distinction. Like if you played a gotcha game, you played a gotcha game. Um, I guess maybe a caveat for that'll be when Resonance comes out. Technically, that's Brave Exvius, but it'll be Resonance. Also looks really good. I've already bought it. But no further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So let's start with Final Fantasy One. I'm very tempted to put this in the stands the test of time tier. Pinnacle, I can tell you right off the bat, like this will not just because Final Fantasy is my favorite game series. Like I'm not just putting all of my favorite games up here. Pinnacle means like this is best in class, best in game generation, best in genre. Like this needs to be almost inarguable, or it's not going here. Stands the test of time are games that are like these were really, really good when they came out, and they're still really, really, really good today. It stands the test of time. One is going into fine, like if I were going to go like the most impactful games in RPG history, Final Fantasy One is technically on that list because we don't get the rest of the Final Fantasy series if the game that saved Square doesn't exist. Like we don't get Dragon Quest and Dragon Warrior, we don't get Final Fantasy and all of that series. Like we don't get a lot of stuff. Um, so like from that perspective, great. But from like a game systems, like it's very old and very bare bones, and even with like remasters and re-releases on the 3DS and all that kind of stuff, like it's fine, totally fine. Two is in the exact same category. Um, three is also in the same category. There's nothing wrong with these three games. Um, they're fine. There's nothing that like really stands out. Some have characters, some don't. Some have job classes, some don't. Like they try to do some different things, but these are so old. Like they're fine. Like we do have, we'll have some of the older games that will stand in these top two tiers, but the first three are not there. Four. I'm also going to put four in fun. Four is, and this, we'll get into this more in a later video. Um, Four, I think, has one of the best stories, um, both from like a character and like a writing perspective, but also from like a pacing and world building and immersion perspective, which I think are both super important for having a great story. Gameplay and game systems, like this is still a super early in the genre's lifetime game. And like four was fun, and even with the HD remake, like it stands. You know what? I'll put it as stands the test of time, just because like it's so solid. It's not spectacular, but it's just so solid, that it actually um, deserves a good amount of love. Um, I'm going to say five also belongs in the stands the test of time um, placing, because five, up until another game, which we'll get into in a few, um, five really took the job system to another level. What you could do with that, the way you could manage the jobs and specialize your characters. There's elements of that in one, two, three. Four was very much like dedicated roles. Five, you had a lot more, kind of make your team aspects, but really took it to another level and did a really good job with that. Six, been vocal about this in the past. I'm going to do it now. Not my favorite game. Couldn't even finish it. Got bored out of my mind about 6 to 8 hours in. Just wasn't for me. Sorry. I know it's a good amount of people's favorites. I think it's like six to a certain part of the internet is what Legend of Dragoon is for me. I love it. You can't tell me otherwise, and I don't care how many people actually bought the copies. Like it to me, it's a goat, and that's fine. People can have that opinion, but right now we're just talking game systems. So like, I understand for story reasons, maybe higher, but pure gameplay, I think it stands the test of time. I think the Magicite system was definitely viable. You had a nice balance between dedicated characters and also having what I would call high end customization. Especially if you managed the build up, properly. Like wait until you can get your espers and get your magicite and get everything. With your levels, try to depress your level down so you get better stat gains and become stronger at the appropriate points in the plot. I think it's completely viable game. Like just because I didn't enjoy it doesn't mean it's not good. There's games I'm going to have that are going to be probably in this category that some people are going to say, I hated that game. How could it be there? And it's like, it was well designed. The reasons you don't like this game have very little to do with the battle system, and the gameplay in general. So the next game I'm going to put on here, and I might be slightly messing up the timeline here, but I'm going to take a little creative liberty. I'm actually going to put Tactics, and I'm putting both Tactics as well as the recent re-release of Tactics. Like that's one game to me. Um, Games that don't, like the same way like four has an HD remake. I'm not making two separate versions for that. It's basically the same game. You have War of Lion. Um, I don't know if you can call it a genre launcher, but within the tactical JRPG like subgenre, this game still holds up incredibly well. It also takes like everything you get out of five as far as the job system, like to a whole new level. Um, yeah, I don't personally enjoy tactic games. They play slow. I don't like to play slow. They're not super fun to grind, and then one of the things I actually enjoy about JRPGs and turn-based combat is like, no, I actually want to be 10 levels over the boss and like hit them with like three abilities and obliterate them because it amuses the hell out of me. Like that's one of the things I enjoy is over leveling and going through an area and killing things 4,000 times. And that just like you can do that, but it's very very punishing in those games. So I didn't enjoy it. That doesn't mean it's not an absolute peak game. Like Tactics is our first pinnacle game. It's absolutely excellent. I mentioned I will not be splitting remasters into separate games. The next game on the list I will actually be splitting because we have genuinely distinct games. Final Fantasy VII, the original, is a stands the test of time game. The biggest distinction between characters at endgame, especially if you know how to manage your materia, are the limit breaks. And there's nothing wrong with that. I actually like that system. Like pick the party you like the most. If you want to run freaking, Kate Sith and Yuffie and Sid in your team, like you pretty much can. Not the best party you could make, but you can do it. And if level your materia up enough and manage your gear, like not you can beat the game with just about any combination you want. W summon Knights of the Round, who cares? So, um, I think it's a very, very, very good system. I think from the perspective of like having distinct characters, but being able to kind of make anybody be anything you want, it's really good. But there's a peak that other games got to in like that space and like turn-based battle in general, especially like the active time system and some of those things that it's been passed. Um, Next entry on the list is eight. So there's a lot of people that are going to put eight here and have it as the first genuinely bad game. There are other people that will have it here and will point out that 8 is one of the most interesting and unique Final Fantasy games ever created because by this point, everyone who played JRPGs and RPGs in general knows like kill things, get level, get stronger. And 8 flips all of that on its head. Like the absolute best way to play 8 is get Diablos as quick as you can, get no AP, get no encounter, completely abuse the triple triad, which by the way, up until a couple games later, best mini game in an RPG, like one of the best ever, but like best up to that point by miles. Love triple triad. I can still hear the theme music. Like the best way to beat the game is to have like the lowest level party you possibly can because all enemies scale to your characters. It's also a game where like you have a character has a limit break that literally can kill any boss in the game. So Selphie's the end. The fact that I get it to Selphie would never not piss me off because we'll get into Selphie when I do a video on the main cast of each game. Um, you can manipulate with Irvine. You can have Squall's ultimate weapon in the first disc. Like it's a highly exploitable game, but that is both the gift and the curse. For those who don't figure out that part of the system, it can be an actually quite abusive game because the drawing magic system is janky and very dull and very frustrating. So in this case, I'm going to split the difference. I'm going to put it at fine. It was my first Final Fantasy game. It has a special nostalgic place for me. I actually also enjoy the card system and the ability to manipulate the game and junction, the right magics and the right spots and get crazy stat totals. Like That's actually fun to me. I've never done a no level run because I'm like, no, 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 I'll beat the game at level 100, but I'm also going to like manipulate all these other systems and have Lionheart on disc one and all the other stuff. But I can, in good faith, put it above fine because the accessibility, even though they innovated, the accessibility and how well that landed, it's fine, and it's like dead last in the fine category. Like people who feel like it's bad, I get where they're coming from. Final Fantasy IX. This may be controversial, but I'm putting it. I'm putting this. I'm calling this a pinnacle game. I think nine. I think in a lot of ways, nine ends up becoming criminally underrated. Like that 7, 8, 9, 10 run is just an absurd run in gaming history, and I feel like a lot of the time nine is the game that gets left out. Um, it is so close to perfection with what a turn-based game can be. It's incredibly well balanced. I love the abilities and skills often being tied to gear, and then you leveling up the gear so that you have it permanently, so that you can then use other gear, and the ability to like manipulate that and you leverage it and manage it for your characters. And like it was a very well finely tuned game, and each character, because you took away the stat manipulation part, like six, seven, and eight all had the ability to like manipulate your stats and really make characters far more powerful, far beyond their role. And in a large part, nine takes that away. And you have characters back into archetypes, and it gives you some freedom within that and a system to engage with, but it also gives you guardrails. And I actually really like the design decision of guardrails. I think narratively it makes a lot of sense. I think the synergies and some of the combination abilities, what you can do with Vivian Steiner or some of that kind of stuff, like it's just for a PS1 game, it's just so goddamn good. It's just that simple to me. It's so rock solid good at absolutely every element of the game. Nothing it did is the best we've ever seen or genre defining, but because it's just so good across the board, like I'm still gonna put it in this pinnacle category. But if I rank things like left to right, like it's gonna be the last one on this list, but I'm still putting it there. Um, I think it more than stands the test of time, but is an absolutely excellent game from a design perspective. And I'll keep this one actually relatively brief. Final Fantasy X is the best turn-based JRPG ever made until the last like year and a half. I forget exactly when Clair Obscur 33 came out. That is the first turn-based JRPG where I will listen to an argument of they made a better battle system. There have been some other, Persona 5 and a lot of other very, very successful games a lot of people enjoy. But if you're talking about a turn-based RPG, Final Fantasy X is the absolute pinnacle. It is the definition of the pinnacle of that genre, that subgenre, however you want to look at that. The Every single element of that game is flawless, and that's actually kind of its biggest problem. Here's exactly what I mean by that. It's so good that a lot of people within Square went, "There's nothing we can do to pass this. We can't make a better game than this. We might be able to make a game as good as this. We'll never make a game better than this." And so this is the point within the series. 1 through 10 plus tactics, they really just made great games, and they largely stayed in their lane, but it's also a lane they built. When I say stayed in their lane, I literally mean their lane. They built it, they own it, it's their fucking highway. 10 is kind of the pivot point in a lot of ways for the series, unfortunately, in a lot of regards. Because you basically achieved perfection, they started doing a lot of weird shit. And some of that weird shit's really good, and a lot of that weird shit is not. Which is actually going to bring me to our first bad. Now I'm going to come with a couple caveats here. I have a couple hundred hours total playtime in Final Fantasy 11. My brother has 10, probably 50. It connects that. Um, the game came out 20 plus. People still play it. They've tried to kill it like 4 times, and the community's like, no, no, hold up. Actually, we still have new people signing up. This game still, it's weird. It's a bad game. Full stop. It is not accessible. It is very poorly balanced in a bunch of ways. Did I mention it's not accessible? Like even among MMOs, like not accessible at all. Um, Now there is a top like skill cap. Like if you are a top player, especially back in the day on like Japanese servers and Japanese link shells, and understood how to use skill chains and magic bursts, like you could blow through content, and like it was a very deep system, especially with macros and some of the things you could do. Like you could even macro in like gear changes to like min max and optimize damage. Like there was a lot there for the top 1% of players. And for everybody else, you have this weird TP system. You have auto attack, which basically does nothing, that's tied to the TP system. You have wildly inconsistent incoming and outgoing damage from different sources, a bunch of hidden stats that are never explained to you in the system, and you just had to hope you could find someone online that had figured it out that could tell you how it worked. Did I mention the macros? Because for like inexperienced players or players who were not like hardcore veterans, macros were impossible to figure out. Um, this was a bad game. I love this game. I've played a ton of this game. I may someday play this game again. It's still a bad game. Just I don't think there's any way around that. And I mentioned 10 as a pivot point. If 11's a bad game with caveats, 12 is just a bad game. Again, we'll get into the story uh, in an upcoming soon video. Final Fantasy 12 might have the worst like systems and like gameplay end to end of any Final Fantasy game ever made. I'm not counting like Crystal Chronicles or like some of the spin-off games. Like among mainline games, this might actually be the absolute worst. I don't think it's the worst game. We'll get to that in a little bit of what the just end-to-end worst Final Fantasy game is, period. But 12 is really hard to argue with. Even with Zodiac Age. Like Zodiac Age improved a lot of things. You could do some funny things with 12. Like if you grind enough and like you learned enough of the systems, like using the gambit system, there are certain like end game super bosses where like if you set your gambits up and like you had enough like farmed stuff in your inventory, you could walk into the arena, start the fight, go to school, come home, fight was over, thing was dead. It could literally auto battle. It was a clicker game, an auto battle clicker game, but Final Fantasy. That is how hilariously absurd like the ability to manipulate the system was and to use gambits, but like again, accessibility, it was a bad, boring system. And when you think of, even though I don't like six, the West, but also just like around the world, the run of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is a goated run in every possible regard for games. Even if you don't like 8, there is like the cinematics from 8, the story from 8, whether you understood it or not, the GF system, the interesting part of like junctioning magic. It's like it was so accessible and made so much sense. Like even people that were like, this just wasn't the game for me. You can't say it's a bad game. I just didn't like this thing. You could say 12 is a bad game. This was we took all the worst parts of Final Fantasy 11 and we stuck it in a mainline game and we sprinkled like a little bit more accessible. Like the Gambit system was like a less confusing, less shitty version of the macro system from 11. Like they just took a bunch of the same stuff and went like, hey, people had tough with this before, so like let's make it worse. It's just not a good game. Um, I'm actually going to say Final Fantasy 13 is fine. There's a lot of people that will say it is bad. I do not think it is bad. I think you didn't like it. the game systems, like calling it a hallway simulator thing, like that's fine. Here's the thing: the reason you didn't like the hallway simulator was because of the story and the writing, and we'll talk about that when we do that video. Final Fantasy X is a hallway simulator, and it's way more of a hallway simulator than 13 is. And anyone and everyone who likes the series basically agrees that 10 is the greatest, if not, among the greatest JRPGs ever created. Full stop. Period. And anyone who wants to argue with that, there's a reason that they re-release it on every new device that comes out, and it's a top seller on every new device that comes out. Like that's how good the game is. I have 5 copies of the HD remaster, 4 copies of the HD remaster of 10 because it's been released so many times, and every time it comes on something new, I'm like, but I want it because I want to play blitzball and I want to do things and I want to do the monster. Like, it's a great game. 13 is not that. Um, I think 13, it wasn't accessible enough for enough players to really appreciate how much depth there was to the paradigm system, especially at endgame. And it didn't have the problem that 12 had. Um, Obviously, 11's an MMO, but it didn't have the problem of that game either. It wasn't a slow game. It was not slow like the tactics game. It's actually a very fast game. Especially as you like move on through the game and you go through things like battles can actually go at very, very quick speed, and there's a lot of strategy and a lot of engagement. It's not just like hit one button and go forward, and like that was the meme, but that's not actually the reality of the game. Um, but I'm dinging it a bit because like it tried to do something different, but you now have 11, 12, and 13 where to a large degree, as the player, I am setting the game up to play itself. There's player action, but it doesn't feel that way. 13 does it better. It's also a goddamn gorgeous game. Um, but like just like gameplay systems, the thing that makes me not put it in bad, and just it's fine. It doesn't totally stand the test of time, but it's fine. Is 13's paradigms themselves have a ton of depth. Going from Ravager to Saboteur to Sentinel to Medic to Commando, they're so distinct in how each one plays and the role and the makeup of your party at the time and the different characters who had the different things available. Like there was enough depth there. I'm just not calling it a bad game because it was balanced. It did make sense. It was an enjoyable experience for a lot of people. It was accessible. Like the average player could figure out that system and get through the game and be totally fine. There were other issues with the game. I just don't think they were gameplay or game design. And I will actually argue that Final Fantasy 13-2, or whoops, that's 10-2. I grabbed the wrong one. We'll actually come back to that in a second. Although I'm going to leave this here, but I forgot to talk about that one, so we'll talk about that one in a second. But I am actually going to put 13-2 in the stand as the test of time. So Final Fantasy 13-2, I think it takes all the best parts of 13, but the reason why I think it stands the test of time, again, not talking about story or other stuff, you're just raw gameplay. By cutting you down to 2 characters, but then giving you the ability to have that Pokemon element. Oh, I'm running Noelle as this, I'm running Sarah as this, and like I really need like just a big damage mage. Oh, that bomb enemy is a Ravager. Let me capture the bomb enemy, and now I can actually use enemies as part of my team. Like the monster capture feature is always a well desired, well received feature in gaming. 13-2 from that aspect is actually a shit ton of fun. The engagement level and just the fun factor, and to a certain degree the accessibility of 13-2 gets a big bump. simply by adding that element on top of a system that, like I already said, like there's a lot of depth within the paradigm system, but other things depress it. As far as like how the game was received, I actually genuinely think 13.2 is a game that stands the test of time from a raw system standpoint. If they took a better presentation and a different game and they used the same systems or same ideas again, I think it would be a smash hit. I think the reception of that game is due to factors that are outside of the design decisions themselves. And then 10.2, I do not have it as Pinnacle, but I actually really like the dress sphere. The ideas behind the dress sphere system are very innovative and they work. Um, I'm not going to put it in Pinnacle because you only have three characters. Yes, they had a bunch of different job classes. One thing I really liked about it is when you went to a different dress sphere, you actually got like a completely different stat spread. So you'd have a 3-person party, but you really had like a 15-person party because depending on what dress sphere you put on somebody and what their gear and equipment was, like your stats go through big changes. And then like to get to their ultimate forms, typically you would go the 3-spot dress sphere because you had to hit all 3 nodes. Like there was depth there. Here's why to me it's not a Pinnacle game. It's really two things. Um, because I think it gets a huge bump for trying to be innovative and actually landing it. It is, and this is where we get into systems. The best dress spheres in the game, and a lot of the best stuff in the game, was locked behind an absolutely brutal and punishing completion system. Like you literally needed 100% to get some of the special dress spheres and some of the best items. It's not just a difficulty spike, it's an artificial difficulty spike. It's like having to do, I'll put it like this: if the character who scales the absolute fucking worst at endgame in 10, if their celestial weapon wasn't the one that requires you to do the 100 lightning bolt dodges in the thunder plains, there would be a lot of people with worse memories of that game. As much as Chocobo Chaser is annoying, like one lucky run and like you're done and you're fine, and it's still more kinetic and more engaging than dodging the lightning bolts. Even I know there's ways to like manipulate that and get around. It still sucks. But there's also no point in doing it unless you're going for a pure 100% because Lulu, once you get the Agas and you complete her sphere grid, like you literally use the black magic spheres, put them on Yuna. She literally has higher stats, plus she has summons. Yuna is now your white mage, your black mage, and your summoner, and Lulu's never a main part of the party again because her overdrive is like it doesn't scale well at all. Like, don't use her. And end game, you're going to use Riku in the role you would think you would use Lulu for anyway. So like that's the saving grace there. You don't have that in 10. It is a brutally, brutally, brutally punishing game, and there are the end game and parts of the end game for that game are scaled so aggressively and so punishingly. I cannot call that a Pinnacle game because there's some really, really anti-player bad decisions there. But I think in concept, the dress sphere system is really innovative and really cool. And I would actually love to see it in another Final Fantasy game or another JRPG in general. I think it's an excellent way to add depth and strategy to a turn-based RPG. I think that part of it's really good, but there's some other system stuff within 10.2 where no, you can be up here. It's really good. Again, other parts of that game we can talk later, but the gameplay, excellent. But it's not up here. So now we're going to go to the next MMO on the list, which is Final Fantasy XIV. And Final Fantasy XIV to me is this is another Pinnacle game. It has taken the crown as the biggest MMO in the world. It's held it for a while now. I'm not sure if this exact moment in time has the most players, but like as of Endwalker, which is like a 10+ year saga, like that was the biggest MMO in the world. It would rank at an incredibly high level in basically every regard you could look at for a video game, but specifically looking at game design and mechanics. Their raid content is elite. Um, The systems that are behind that are excellent. It is extremely accessible to players. It is a game, and again, it's an MMO, so it absolutely must, even more than most games, must fill these criteria. But it does meet the point of an inexperienced player can go into the game and they can fumble around and they can figure out how to play it. They won't be able to do, savage raids or anything like that, but they can get through the game and they can play the game and have a great time and enjoy the story and play with their friends and do a lot of content, kind of just fumbling their way around. It's accessible enough for that. And then it also has that absolute, pinnacle, picture perfect precision level of requirement for like, new release, savage content, end game rating, all that kind of stuff as well. So it's about as good as an MMO can get. It's reached that level, and it deserves it deserves its respect for that. Um, Next is another bad one. This is the worst Final Fantasy game ever created. This is the worst mainline game ever created. When 12 came out, we would have thought like, oh, this is like they could never make a game worse than this. Au contraire. 15 is not only is 15 awful, but the most disappointing part of 15 being awful is not only can I not, outside of like cinematics, there's not gameplay. Like the cinematics are dope. It looks good. The gameplay, the game balancing, like all that stuff in 15 is just awful. But it looked like it should have been so much fun. It looked, especially in promotional materials and the demo and even like the early part of the game, like you feel like, oh, this should be this really fast paced. Like they decided to go the action route. Okay, it's fast paced and it's very kinetic and like you got all this movement and all this stuff. And then like it has no depth. It's not good. It's horribly balanced. Like a lot of the stuff that looks cool, after a couple hours, you're like, yeah, cool. I've done the exact one move that exists in this game 400 times. I know there's things other than Warp Strike, but like seriously, this game just feels like Warp Strike over and over and over and over. Use anything else, like it's slow and it's unwieldy. Like it's just the AI, your teammates. I thought Donald and Goofy in Kingdom Hearts 1 were like allies who obstruct. I was wrong. No, 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 no. These are allies that obstruct. Oh my god, were they awful. Your allies actively impede you. It is an awful game from a development perspective in every possible regard. Um I have nothing good to say about this game. We'll talk about the story later. I'll have a few good things to say about the game, but for the most part, there also will have nothing good to say about this game. It was an absolute disaster and legitimately harmed. It harmed the franchise and harmed the studio. Legitimately, it sold extremely well, and a lot of people did not like it one bit, and a lot of people quit, and that has hurt sales in subsequent releases in some very real ways, which is a shame because the next numbered game in the series is 16, and I'm actually putting it here. And I'm going to put it here for a few reasons, but two main ones. Number one, um, they made a pure, true action game. This is not a hybrid game. This is not a synthesized game like the remake series, which we'll talk about in a second. This is an action game. If you're talking, especially like general consumers, if you want to talk about like really good action games and you're not talking about Souls likes, which I would argue are not really good action games, they're great games. They're not great action games. They're dodge parry games. They literally brought in the Devil May Cry team. I don't mean that as like, oh no, they literally, they were like, hey, this is as good as it gets. Bring those guys in and consult them and hire some of the team and like, we want to do this. Let's make it the best it possibly can be. We'll talk about the story later. I already kind of talked about the main character, Clive, like absolute S class there. Um, Final Fantasy 16 is like a systems design. You talk about the icon combat, fantastic. Oh, I literally get to participate in a kaiju fight. And there's a bunch of different kaiju fights, and they're all distinct from each other. Ridiculous. The combat itself, the way that you actually play and fight differently depending on which icons you have equipped, very Devil May Cry. All of those elements. It is a phenomenal game. You're allowed not to like it. One of my best friends, huge Final Fantasy fan, basically, if it's not turn based, it's not Final Fantasy to me. I'm not playing it. Great, and that's good for him. And he missed out. It's an awesome game. What's funny about that is he played the Devil May Cry games, but he's in a tizzy and whatever. But look, you're allowed to not like that style of game, but for what they were going for, they absolutely hit a massive home run, and in all of the best ways because it's accessible, it's intuitive, it's hitting all the marks you're looking for, and it's also breakable. One thing the best system should have, when I say breakable, I don't mean like, oh, here's a game breaking bug and you took an advantage of an exploit. I mean, if you're really good at using the systems as they're designed, you should have ways to leverage that to break the game, like do crazy amounts of damage and one phase bosses and things like that, not because game is bad, but because player is good. That's a sign actually to me of a really good game where it's like, oh no, you figured out the system. You mastered this and here's your reward, and it's intentional that this exists. This interaction is not accidental, and there's a lot of those in this game. So whether or not people liked it, I will just not listen to 16 slander. It is absolutely phenomenal. And I am also going to put now this is I'm putting this for remake and rebirth because I'm when Revelation comes out, I'll put all three into it. Like I would put all three into a single bucket because it is, even though there's distinct elements in the battle system, it is a single growing thing. I also just ran out of graphics, but um, to me, Rebirth is the first like open world ish game that I've ever enjoyed. I don't like open world games. It's not for me. I hate Skyrim because I think their combat looks campy and awful and terrible, and I can't get past it. And I understand it's a good game for a lot of reasons, and I'm being a child about it, and I'm totally okay with that. And I don't care. I hate it. I don't generally like open world games. The way they balanced game systems, the way they worked in fast travel, the way they worked in unlocking the fast travel, the depth of the game. I actually like the mini games. I know people complain about them. Guys, I don't know if you knew this, but you can, like, optional content, it's optional. You don't have to do it. You can skip that. So I'm just not like, I just don't care. Like, oh, well, there were so many things I could do as a player. And I didn't have to do most of them, but I'm going to bitch about them because I felt like I had to do most of them because I decided I wanted 100% the game. That was a choice. That is not a bad design decision. I don't want to hear about it. Like that's my perspective on that. Shut up. The hybrid system they have, where it's kind of an action game, but there's a ton of ATB, like real time, but kind of turn based elements built into it. And if you really leverage those well, like it's actually the key to the combat system. I love the synergy system. I think it's narratively, it makes a ton of sense. It fits into the game, looks great, plays well, pun intended, synergizes so well with the other systems. I think Rebirth is among the best video games I've ever played from just a play perspective, which is all we're looking at today. Just playing the game. And to me, that's enough. Other stuff, again, like we'll get into it later in following videos. But that's kind of my thoughts on the Final Fantasy series in general. Yeah, I have one other game. I tried to forget that it exists, but it does. I'll give it its 5 seconds. Lightning Returns is a bad game. Any game with a timer is a bad game. Just I don't care. You put a timer and you say, hey, you have to be, especially like an RPG. Oh, you have to beat this game in this amount of time, and like a timer is a bad game. I'm marking you as a bad game, and I don't care. There's plenty of other things to not like about Lightning Returns. Like again, I think Lightning is a phenomenal character. I think there's elements of 13 story that are really, really good. Like it's kind of a gem surrounded by caca. But the gameplay, especially of Lightning Returns, caca. Like it's not good. It's not well balanced. It doesn't fit well. And you put a timer on the game, bad. I'm done. Um, so just quick recap. What's crazy is this wasn't intentional. We have 6 games that in the series history that I would consider like the pinnacle of gaming, like genre defining, era defining. These games are phenomenal. We can argue about 9. I won't listen to an argument on 14. I won't listen to an argument on 10. I personally won't listen to an argument on 16 or Rebirth. Like you can disagree. We're just like there's no point having this discussion because we fundamentally have different understandings about the conversation. If we disagree on those games. 9, I'm willing to listen. But also, you have another 6 games that are like stand the test of time. You could go back and you could play them right now, and like from a gameplay perspective, like these games are still really, really good. Again, story and other elements, different conversation, but like just like these games really hold up. And then you got 5 more games that are totally fine, and a bunch of these are like the first 3, which are from like what is it, 40 years ago. And then you got these 4. And I still contend 11 is a bad game that I love, but it's a bad game. 12, 15, and Lightning Returns suck. Um, these are games I would gift to someone I don't like, especially 15. But like 12 and 15 both, like if it was just like, hey, I know you don't care about story and you always skip cutscenes, and so like, here, just play the game. Oh, I'm sending someone I don't like these games. They're going to hate it. They will never play my favorite series, and that means that I get to enjoy things I love and you don't get to enjoy it too. um, yeah, that's kind of my opinion on this. Appreciate anybody who watched this as always. Whether on YouTube or on Twitch, subscribe, like, comment, whatever form of internet you are viewing this on. Do the things to help support the channel is always appreciated, and especially the comments. Again, like I said, on some of this, like I feel it's very objective. Like Final Fantasy X is objectively just one of the absolute best JRPGs that's ever been created. That's an objective fact from a systems perspective and otherwise. Um, but I'd love to hear other people's opinions on a bunch of this, and maybe there's things I love that you hate, maybe things that I hate that you love, and in general, all opinions are welcome. Share them, and we'll chat about it in the comment section.